Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Clyde-Savannah Central School District budget hearing for the 2021 school year. Will we please stand for the pledge to the flag, Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the
Republic
for
which
which it stands,
one nation,
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
for all. Thank you. Mr. Hayden, do you have a few words?
Yes, thank you. I just, again, welcome everyone to our budget hearing for the 2020-21 budget school year. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Susan Gray, Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations, for those of you that are new to our Zoom meetings. Mrs. Gray started with us April 1st, and will be her first budget hearing presentation. She's done a great job coming in April and putting this together and wrapping up the budget where Mrs. Hughes left off and continuing to this point. So it's a lot of work to begin with, and it's certainly extra work to come in at this time of the year under the circumstances of a pandemic and school closure. So nice job to Mrs. Gray for this. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan Gray at this point.
Thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure starting out here. Everyone's been wonderful, even under these circumstances, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to talk to everyone about the Clyde-Savannah 2021 budget. I want to thank all of those people that are tuning in this format. It's a great way to get information about our budget and learn about things that may be happening here at the district. So with that, we're just going to get started, and I'm going to let Mr. Hayden talk about our mission and vision and some challenges and strengths that we've been facing over the past few months.
Okay. So as many of you know, we have a new mission statement as a result of our district strategic planning. And with any mission statement and anything that we do in the district, all of our decisions really go back to our mission. And our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower our learners to unlock their potential in order to meet the challenges in an ever-changing world. And I mean, if you look at this mission statement, more than ever, that last part of it, to meet the challenges in an ever-changing world, boy, our world is absolutely changed. And it has not made this process by any means easy for us as we navigate through. So the building of our budget has been complex. It's required deep and thoughtful analysis, strategic decisions. There were several factors that made this particularly challenging. As we are all aware, New York State has been in the midst of a serious fiscal crisis that really was happening before the coronavirus pandemic. Unfortunately, this has translated into a loss of state dollars to our school system, as well as all school systems in the state. And unfortunately for us, we lost dollars as a result of the pandemic of over $1 million. Susan, we have the exact numbers, I think it's 1 point something million. That's a lot of lost dollars for a school district. So the board has worked diligently and always is committed to maintaining an overall quality of a program, certainly while minimizing any financial difficulty to our taxpayers, and particularly during a period of economic distress. So it has been challenging. I think that we have done a good job in balancing the budget, taking everything into consideration to really minimize impact on program. And that's our goal, is really trying to minimize impact, especially when we've had some serious financial cuts from the state, and not knowing if there'll be additional cuts coming our way potentially could be very, very problematic for our district, as every other district will be dealing with the same thing. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to Susan.
All right, after the mission comes our vision, which is we aspire to be a student-centered community that promotes diversity to meet today's goals and tomorrow's opportunities. And again, we need to keep our vision in mind when we're putting together our budget to make sure that our students are prepared for a global world. When they go out into the world, they're ready to meet that head on and be successful. Our budget goals were to maintain current programs with adequate staffing by balancing the resources of the community with the educational mission of the district while maximizing efficiencies and improving outcomes. And that's really important this year, to balance the resources of the community with our educational mission, especially in these trying times with the pandemic and everything that all of our community is going through, not just the school district. So some of our challenges that we've faced over the past, well, year, but mostly the past several months, is that we have an uncertain funding stream. The state has taken away money. They froze our foundation aid, and then they removed some of that even. They reduced that by a pandemic adjustment, and now they're threatening to take even more money away depending upon how the state's finances work out over time. They have 3 measurement periods, and then they're going to let us know if they're going to take more money away from us. We've had changing timelines every 2 weeks. We were wondering, were we going to stay open or were we going to stay closed, and what was it going to look like? We've had unfunded mandates. We've had to buy extra cleaning supplies, extra paper products, food, that because we continue to feed our students, and all the other mandates that the state has come through and told us that we need to do with online learning and distance learning. So a lot of those things, so we're not sure where the money is going to come from, the extra money is going to come from, that we had to pay for all of these things. We've had additional technology needs for students that may not have access to adequate Wi-Fi or internet at home. We have to make sure we're adhering to guidelines, especially right before schools closed. We had to do the sanitize everything, and sometimes those guidelines change. We've had multi-agency involvement. Sometimes we get our guidance from the state, sometimes it comes from the federal government, sometimes it comes from the county, and sometimes they don't always agree. So we have to try and make sure we're following what we feel best, best meets the needs of our students. And also we have additional social, emotional, and economical struggles in the community. And we have to keep all of these things in mind when we're building our budget. Among those challenges, though, we do have strengths. Our staff has been wonderful through this whole thing, and the ingenuity that they have in educating our students via distance learning has been incredible. I don't know if Mike has anything to add about that, but they have just gone above and beyond.
They absolutely have, and we're certainly learning as we go through this. If you remember, we only had like 6 hours to put together a distance learning plan. When the governor announced that school was closing, that was not a lot of time to put it together, but our staff has done an incredible job. As Susan mentioned, one of those challenges was getting our devices in the hands of all students. That was a challenge, as you can imagine, but we got it done in less than 12 hours, putting a plan together. It was incredible. And then we've learned, again, that connectivity was a struggle, and the inequity of a connectivity. So the district did go ahead and was able to purchase a number of the hotspots, the Khajiit hotspots, and additionally was able to purchase some Wi-Fi capability that we'll be installing on our buses. So if in the event that we are continuing for a longer time being out of school, we'll have some additional means of connectivity. And then looking forward to next year, if we do need to have another closure, then we'll have a plan in place for that. So again, our staff has just been incredible. One of our biggest concerns, certainly with the closure, was the number of families that depend on our on food. We have a number of kids that really 2 meals a day, that's what they're getting, and we've been able to continue that operation of emergency food distribution. So our food service personnel, kudos to them. They are really unsung heroes. They've done an absolutely incredible job, as our maintenance and cleaning staff. They have been in the buildings, disinfecting, getting the buildings ready for what's to come next. So they have gone above and beyond. Cannot thank them enough for the work that they've been doing. Community support. This is not something that we are able to do alone by any means. Our school community has been incredibly supportive. As a superintendent, I cannot thank our community for the flexibility and patience and support of their, your own children and helping us along and trying to keep things somewhat normal in a new normal world. So, and again, kudos to our students. Those are the ones that are really being impacted. They, students and kids are resilient and they've been doing the best they can. And we do understand that there are certainly challenges, but I want to thank our students as well for their flexibility, patience, and teamwork as we get through this. So we are a district with a lot of strengths.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. So getting into the numbers, our budget expenditures this year, our budget is increasing by 6.2%, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. Our proposed budget is $22,035,010, and that's an increase of $1,287,036. So if you look up above under the dollar change, and you look at general support is things like buildings and grounds and central office, district office, and those types of things. If you look down below under community services, you'll see a negative $75,000. And that $75,000 is moved up into general support. That's our SRO budgeted figure. And the state came through with a change in how we classify our SRO expenditures. So that's why that negative $75,000 is really a positive $75,000 under general support, along with some increases in some of the other general support area. Utilities is in there. All of those types of things are part of insurance, are part of general support. Instruction is down. We've had to make some reductions, and we did those through attrition and others. And that's why the instructional costs are down. Pupil transportation is about the same. Employee benefits always increase, and they're going up by $106,000. And the big number is debt service. And the debt service increase are payments that we need to begin making on our capital project, which is something that we plan for. And offsetting that debt service is additional state aid that will be coming in. So while it looks like a huge increase, most of it is in the debt service line, and we'll be getting money from the state to offset that. And when you look at it overall, instruction is, that's straight salaries is 49%, employee benefits are 21%, general support 12%, debt service 13%, and transportation 5% of our expenditures. The state requires us to share our budget is 3 components: program, capital, and administrative. Program includes expenses for teaching, and which includes everything: salaries, benefits, insurance, programs for students with disabilities, occupational education, training, the library, attendance, guidance, health services, psychological, social, and counseling, co-curricular activities, athletics, and transportation. And that would be the largest part of our budget, $15,042,027. Capital, the capital component includes expenses for operations and maintenance of all property, including upkeep and all utility costs, and also all principal and interest payments for our debt service. Administrative, $2,541,840 includes expenses for the district clerk and district office administration and staff, personnel, legal services, liability and property insurance, curriculum development, and Board of Education costs. So it's about 68% program, 12% administrative, and 20% capital. Our revenues for the coming year, state aid, as you can see, you can see under the dollar change that it is increasing, but that mostly is due to our building aid increasing. And that's a very small change compared to the amount that the building aid is going up. Normally, state aid would be increased, and I have another slide that breaks down state aid individually. So normally we would have seen a much larger increase in state aid, and that didn't happen this year. We're proposing a 2% increase in property taxes, which amounts to $99,000 and change. Our local revenue and Medicaid is going up by about $41,000. We increased use of our fund balance by $100,000. We're increasing the use of our reserves by $180,000. And we have a transfer coming in to help offset the debt service payments of $623,819, which is coming from our debt service reserve. So total revenues equal $22,035,010, which is equal to our expenditures. That's a balanced budget. So our tax levy limit, this is the complicated calculation that goes along with the tax cap. We start with last year's levy, and we multiply that by a tax-based growth factor. So the tax-based growth factor is the property in the community, the growth of the properties in the community. So if there's new buildings or increased assessments or things like that, that's the tax-based growth factor. So the last year's levy is multiplied by that. And then we add the pilot's receivable from the prior year back into that for a total of $5,024,113.64. Then that gets multiplied by the allowable levy growth factor. That is the consumer price index, which for 2019 was 0.0181 or 1.81%. So it didn't go up 2% or more like it has in the past few years. It was actually, the allowable levy growth factor was below 2% this year. We have to back out the pilots that we're going to receive. Pilots are payments in lieu of taxes, and those are properties that are not on the tax roll, but they make a payment to the district for in place of taxes, so payment in lieu of taxes. And then we could add in some available carryover from the prior year because we did not tax to our limit in prior years. So our total levy limit before exclusions was $5,141,158.10, and that's a 3.54% increase. We had no exclusions. We had no pending court orders or judgments. Our capital tax levy was not in the positive. It was actually in the negative. We received more aid than we had to pay out in capital payments. And pension contribution costs, if they go up more than 2% for the teacher's retirement system or the employee's retirement system, we're allowed to take an exclusion for them. But neither one of those funds went up by more than 2% for the coming year. So our maximum allowable tax levy is $5,141,158.10. Our proposed levy is $5,064,665, which is a 2% increase, and that amounts to $99,307. Over the past few years, you can see the tax levy history and the change that it was from the previous year. So back 5 years ago, your tax levy decreased by 2%, and then the following year it stayed the same. And then the past few years, it's gone up by 0.9%, 1%, and 2% for a 5-year total increase in the tax levy of 0.38%. We have to remember that the decisions that we make today affect us far into the future. And 2% the board felt was a reasonable amount for the community to be able to handle with all of that's happening and not go out to the maximum 3.54%. But with all of the cuts that the state is making to our revenues, we felt that we needed to get at least some money, $99,000 to help with our budget. So how is the tax rate calculated? That's the tax rate that taxpayers pay on their bills in the fall. So the amount of the school tax levy is set by the Board of Education, And then assessments of properties as determined by the local assessor, and then town equalization rates set by the New York State Office of Real Property Services. So those three things factor into that rate that you pay as a homeowner for your property taxes. And if you look at this chart, our proposed 2% tax levy impact on a per $1,000 in each of the towns, you can see the different ranges, and those different ranges are because of the equalization rates and the assessment rates in different towns. So that's why they're different. That's why they're all not the same. So if you have a $100,000 property after STAR, so for example, if you have a $130,000 property, if your house is worth $130,000 and you take the $30,000 off for STAR, that's $100,000, your tax bill would go up by $38 for the entire year. So that's how you can equate those rates to how much one would pay in taxes. This is the slide I was telling you about with our state aid projections. So last year, foundation aid was $10,309,727. They didn't increase that at all for us. They kept it the same, and then they took away what was called a pandemic adjustment of $283,540. That's next to the red arrow, and they say it may be restored with federal funding, but that's not anything that we know about for sure at this time. So we can't count on that money being restored at this point. So we had to leave it in there as a deduct from our foundation aid. The community school set aside is money that comes from foundation aid, and it's earmarked for use for community schools type expenditures. So anything that enhances our community services could fall under that category, such as social workers and those type of expenses. BOCES aid is down slightly. BOCES is an expenditure-based aid, so we get aid on how much money we spend at BOCES. So it's projected that we're going to spend a little bit less with BOCES next year, so we will be getting less aid. High cost excess cost aid is aid that we receive for students with disabilities, and that is up slightly. So you can see that kind of the decrease in BOCES aid and the increase in high cost aid sort of balance each other out or cancel each other out. Hardware, technology, software, library, and textbooks are also expenditure-based aids, and they're based on the numbers of students that we have and fixed costs per student for textbooks, library materials, software, etc. Transportation, including summer transportation, is projected to be down, especially we're probably not going to be doing summer transportation in the summer of 2020, so that's down. And then our building aid, as I had stated before, because our debt payments are going up, our building aid is also increasing to help offset those increased debt payments. So that's our normally that top number, foundation aid, would increase by about $300,000 to $500,000. And as you can see, with that decrease, it's just compounding. So we're getting quite a bit less than we had hoped for back in January and February before all of this started.
Sue?
Yes?
Can I just ask, how is that pandemic money that was taken, how is that calculated? Is that based like on each school district? Was that decided, the state decided, oh, you're not using that money? How was that number derived?
The state didn't really tell us how it was derived, but it's rumored that they used the formula that they use for Title I distribution, Title I grant funds. That's what we think, but it was a number that the state gave to us without a calculation.
Okay. It's just money they thought we weren't using, so they just took it back.
Well, I'm not sure if they felt we weren't using it. I think that they needed to, all school districts received a pandemic adjustment. So the state determined that they were going to need that money because the state's in such financial straits.
Okay, thank you.
So if you look at last year's revenues and this year's revenues, as you can see, our state aid is down. It was 70% of our budget last year, and it's 67% this year. Our tax levy is actually down from last year as a percentage of the total budget. And then you can see that we have an increase in the transfer from debt service. We're increasing the use of our reserves. We're increasing the use of our fund balance. And then our local revenues and Medicaid are about the same. So our propositions, we have 3 propositions on the ballot this year. The first one is the approval of the school budget, which is, as stated before, $22,035,10 to meet the estimated costs and expenditures for the school year, and the tax levy that goes along with it. The second proposition is for our school bus purchase. We propose to purchase 2 65-passenger buses, 1 30-passenger bus with total expenditures not to exceed $343,666. Our transportation aid is 90%, so next year, the following year, we will get 90% of that cost back, and we use our bus reserve to pay for those. And the third proposition is to authorize and direct a student to act as an ex officio member of the Board of Education. And that's something we've had students on the Board of Education for several years now. The other thing on the ballot is our Board of Education election. We have 3 seats up for voting, and we have 5 people running. As you can see, I'm not going to name them off. They're listed there in alphabetical order. And in order to run for the Board of Education, you need to be a citizen of the United States, at least 18, a resident within the district for at least 1 year, able to read and write, and not be employed by the district. And then our vote is quite different this year. All votes are by absentee ballots. They went out last week. Everyone should have theirs by now. And then they're mailed back. There's a postage paid envelope in with the ballot. And so you just mark your votes, put it in the envelope, and put it in the mail to arrive back here by June 9th. All ballots have to be received by 5 o'clock. So if you don't think you can get it in the mail in time to be back here by Tuesday, June 9th at 5 p.m., we are going to have a box outside the district's office door, the main door, and that day on June 9th, and you can drop your ballot in the box that day prior to 5 o'clock. In order to vote, you need to be a citizen of the United States, at least 18 years of age, and a resident within the district for a period of at least 30 days prior to June 9th. Please make sure you sign and seal your ballot, because if it's not signed and the envelope is not sealed, it is not a valid ballot. So please make sure you do that when you send your ballots in. If you would like more information about the budget, our budget statement is online at www.clyde-savannah.org. It's under Departments, Business Office, and Budget Statement. That budget statement includes the 3-part budget, which is the administrative, the program, and the capital. It's got our property tax report card, administrative compensation information, property tax exemption impact reports, and our school district report card. It's quite a comprehensive report. And we also, if you would like a paper copy of it, if you're not able to get online, just request it, call into the district office, and we will mail you a copy of that budget statement. Are there any questions? No questions? Come on, there has to be at least one.
I asked mine.
Okay.
Good job.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just went on the website where you had just stated where you could find all that information, and I don't see it under the business page. But could you tell me how many positions for instructional are you planning to cut with the budget?
Mike, you're muted. Mike's trying to,
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yep. Thanks for that question. Yeah, so this is again, a difficult year. In order to balance the budget, we talked about raising the tax levy to 2%, using a number of reserves, using fund balance, and unfortunately, the gap that we were at required us to cut staffing. So we will be cutting 4 full-time teaching positions in various content areas, and at this point, 5 teacher assistant positions. We also reduced the athletic director to 0.5, an assistant principal position to 0.5, and a director of curriculum to 0.5 as well. So we've had a net decrease there, and we also did talk about those unfunded mandates. So we were able to bring our director of technology position back from BOCES. So that will be a full-time position, and also will cover the mandate of the chief privacy officer that districts have to have. So again, these were not easy decisions. Anytime we do cut a position, there's going to be impact on kids, bottom line. We talked earlier about the 20% decrease in potentially in reduction in state aid, more than we have now. We're hoping that that is just posturing from the governor, but it is critical that we receive this aid coming from the federal government. So I encourage any of our community members to please contact your legislators and continue to advocate for that federal money coming into school districts. We're not the only one that's going to be affected by that. A 20% decrease in aid will be catastrophic for all schools.
When will we have that number? Like mid-June? Is that going to be
I hope so. We were hoping to have that number by May 15th. That was not fruitful in that promise. So really every day we're waiting for those numbers to come in. It makes things challenging for sure when we have to plan for staffing. Sure. You know, we have unknowns. There may have to be additional cuts depending on how much less aid we get. My fingers are crossed that it's again just some political firestorm that's happening now, but we have to certainly be prepared at the very least.
And 20% is the max. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
That's what we have been told. You know, you hear Governor Cuomo continuing to mention in his press conferences daily that if the state doesn't receive additional funding from the federal government, 20% decrease in aid to schools, to healthcare, to first responders, and what have you, local governments. It's again, will potentially be catastrophic. It's unlike anything we've ever experienced before. That's why I'm just hoping it's still a threat.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thanks.
Mike, can you go back over, you went really quickly, and the position that you said that you were creating, I tried to write it down, Director of Technologies. You said we were bringing that back from BOCES?
So currently we have a Director of Technology position. It's serviced through BOCES. It's a 0.5 position. It gives us a director for 2 days a week. Unfortunately, with the needs of the district, we are bringing a full-time position where we will get a Director of Instructional Technology. It will be innovation and the chief privacy officer. As we discussed as a board, that's an unfunded mandate. It's required by school districts to appoint someone. So we were able to do that and combine that responsibility with our director of technology. So we're happy to be able to have that support for the next school year.
Now, I did have a question about that unfunded mandate. I know some of the other school districts in our area, a little bit bigger than us, are finding other ways to absorb that by adding that position on to a standing administrator, but they're not necessarily increasing their pay. They're not adding onto their salary. Is that something that we've considered rather than having that be a paid position, just having that as an add-on for a standing administrator?
So, Mrs. Salerno, this is something that as a board I've discussed with the board for a number of times now. This is the recommendation that the district is giving for this position. We'll be able to meet all of our mandates and the needs of the district.
I remember that we did talk about it, but as I'm talking, hearing about it from other districts and what they were doing, it just created a new question that I thought was worth asking.
I've considered, yep, I've considered those options. I feel that this is the best solution for our particular district and our needs.
I have another question. Have you thought about asking if there's any retirement incentives for people in the district? Because there's so many teachers, especially at the elementary school, that have worked here for so many years, that maybe they would retire and we wouldn't have to cut so many instructional positions if people were given an incentive. Was that something that was talked about?
That certainly was, without getting into specifics of collective bargaining agreements that we have in place. There are certain incentives that are embedded in those previous agreements. So at this point in time, those budgeting mechanisms as an incentive, at this point, we already had incentives built in for reducing of legacy costs. So we explored those options.
The state was also exploring an option through the retirement system, but that's still in the works and they haven't come out with any information on it. So that's not something that we can count on, but it may be something that comes out in the next couple of weeks. But right now we have no additional information on it other than that they're looking at it.
Yeah. It would be great if the state would come out. They did that a number of years ago. It would be separate from any local incentives. You know, we do have a number of staff that actually have submitted intent to retire. You know, with any new staff coming in, the salary is going to be lower than an outgoing staff. So there'll be some breakage there. Again, without knowing truly what the impact of any additional reductions are going to be from the governor, we need to be able to prepare. So some of that breakage, if turns out where we're not going to be hammered with a reduction, then we'll be able to use some of that breakage to hopefully bring some of those cuts back or not needing to cut additional. So we'll definitely, we definitely benefit from breakage from retirees versus new staff.
Also, I know many legislators are against the governor removing aid or taking aid away from schools. And I've read several articles in the past few days about legislators who are trying to fight for our schools. And so contacting your legislator would be a great idea if you would want to do that and advocate for keeping our funding from the state.
Sue, would it be possible to list the names of those individuals with contact numbers?
We can get that information for you, sure.
Susan, the money that you showed us on your graph from the state aid, that's guaranteed money. We're not going to get less than that, what you've already figured into the budget, or is there a possibility that we could still lose some of that money?
There is a possibility that we could lose some of that money. The budget is based on what we know now. And there has been talk about reducing it further.
So if we lose like 20%, that 20% comes out of that number that you showed us in your graph?
Yes, it would be an additional 20% cut.
So then would our budget, I'm sorry, I still don't get all of this, but would we have to come all the way back to the table and redo the budget again if that happens, or no?
Nope. If they cut our budget, if the budget passes at the vote, that is our budget. And if they make cuts to state aid, then we have to fit, our revenues will be reduced and we'll have to make reductions in our budget in order to fit our revenue. It's important to know too that the budget is a spending plan. So that's our best estimate of how much money we plan or need to spend to cover all of our costs for the following year. We try very hard to not spend the entire thing. If we can find efficiencies, if we can find better pricing, there's a lot of things we can do to come up with ways to not spend the entire budget. But if we don't come up with those efficiencies, that would be the most amount of money that we would be able to spend for the year. More questions?
Sue, the purchase of the buses, you said that the district gets back 90% of that cost back into the district?
Yes, that's correct.
And how long does that take? A year?
A year. It comes in the following year. So we have a bus purchase plan. So we replace our buses on a rotational basis. So there's a steady stream of purchases and aid coming in, so that it remains a steady cost. So that's something that we can plan on, and there's not huge spikes or big dips in the cost of our transportation, the cost of our buses.
I have one more question. According to the presentation, Mike said that you were cutting 9 administrative or instructional positions and 1.5 administrative. But then you're going to create one, he said you're bringing back from BOCE. So we will have 10.5 administrators. And according to the BEDS report card, we only have around 744 students. Is there a way that you've looked into maybe sharing administrators between the buildings instead of having so many administrators as opposed to students in the district? Because our enrollment is only going to continue to go down probably.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, again, the question regarding the administrator, this was a pre-existing position that we had through BOCE's Director of Technology. It wasn't a new position. We were able to bring this position. We added responsibilities of the Chief Privacy Officer, part of that position. So instead of getting 2 days a week, we're able to have 5 days a week with our technology needs, and especially even now, to have someone just 2 days a week, it just wasn't meeting the needs of our kids. So when you look at the net reduction with the restructuring of positions, it really became just a net 1.0 reduction. I can't get into specific salary numbers, as it would be personnel matters. It wouldn't be appropriate in this context, but that was a reduction in administrative. And to further answer your question, yes, we continue to look at all of our enrollment, looking at staffing and any given year. So the recommendations for the budget were made at this point in time. We will continue to look at all aspects of a program, including administrative, instructional, non-instructional, support staff, what have you, looking forward. So these are things that are considered on an annual basis. And this is the first time in a number of years we've made cuts to administrative positions based on what you were sharing.
And Mike, it's safe to assume if by chance we don't get a giant cut, some cuts won't happen. Is that correct? I mean, we're erring on the side of caution. Is that?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Can you reframe?
So are these cuts are happening whether we get a 20% reduction from the state, or they're only going to happen if we get a 20? So
No,
say Promo says, oh, you're only going to get a 3% reduction. We won't reduce as many staff as we thought we had to initially.
At this point in time, those reductions will be happening regardless of if we do get less state aid, there'll be more reductions. But as of right now, those are the reductions in staffing to balance our budget.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good question.
Okay.
I have another question. I'm just thinking about at the beginning when we were talking about the things that we do well. We have a lot of really great things that we do well. One of the things that you did highlight was the maintenance and cleaning staff. And I'm just thinking now that we've been out of school since mid-March. We're heading into June next week. Have we laid off or reduced our cleaning staff at all? Because I'm thinking of like ways that we could, the school district could save money. And I'm just wondering if we need the same amount of people with just a few administrators. And I know we're under construction and probably some of it's being used there too, but do we need to have a full maintenance and cleaning staff on right now? Is that a way that we could cut some costs during this time period?
Right now, we are meeting the needs with our current staffing. That's been the recommendation. So again, we'll continue to look at our situation moving into the fall. This is a critical time right now as we start to begin to plan for what the fall will look like. So as we're preparing a building for sanitizing, and our cleaning staff have been doing great. Again, they have been coming in. There are a number of schools that have not been requiring their staff to come in to do the work. So we're fortunate enough to be able to have our staff coming in and doing a great job. And I couldn't imagine that our community would not want the most sanitized building possible. So right now, I would not recommend making any cuts to a building, because as a parent, I want to make sure my kids are safe coming in and we have a clean, sanitized building.
I was only asking because our students aren't coming in.
Yeah, we're preparing, and we have staff coming in as well. So we'll keep doing it, and God bless our staff. They're doing a great job.
Susan, I'd like to thank you for the presentation tonight. Did a very nice job, and hopefully we won't have any more reductions in any kind of state aid, and this budget will be sufficient to have a good school year next year. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice job, Susan.
Thank you.